Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and we're going to jump into a Sweet 16 preview. We're going to talk about the transfer portal as well. We've got a couple of questions for Stephen that just may come up, or things that I've already prepared that aren't related to these two topics. Well, these two topics are going to dominate today, of course. It's been a little while since Stephen on. He's super busy. That just came up last minute. I appreciate his flexibility on just, me not realizing that the Sweet 16 starts tomorrow. I had my days completely messed up, and I was like, I don't know, 2.5 hours ago, was like, hey, so yeah, I would have sent this yesterday, but and so here we are. So I appreciate it, first of all. And second of all, introduce yourself for those who might be new around here.
So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephen Bagell. You can find me on Twitter at @the_NBAGel. That's _NBAGel. That's NBAGELL. I'm host of the One and Done podcast. I'm host of the Bird Rights podcast. Trevor, it's bad when you have to hesitate to say what you're doing when you're doing so much content out there. Director of Branding Operations at the Center Hub, a new basketball platform. If you guys haven't, heard of us yet, check it out at the-center-hub.com. There's going to be a whole bunch of content I'm going to be producing over basically up until the NBA draft. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. And Trevor, thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah, it'll be linked in the description below. And again, appreciate your time with all the stuff going on. And I know you've had a great schedule with college basketball this year. Before we jump into all the fun stuff, how many games did you officially get to? Because it was starting to get up into I want to say it was just taking a guess here. I was following along, and I know it was high 30s at one point. It may have gotten into the low 40s. And yeah, that was the number I was pacing last year. And then this year I cut it in half. So, talk about some of the cool games this year, what the number was, and just anything you did along the way. That's pretty cool.
So the official number of games I was credentialed for this year was 39. Just missed 40.
That's good. That's still good though. That's good.
That does count though, like any tournaments. I did the Big East tournament in MSG. I counted each game as a separate game.
So did I. That was the Charleston Classic really pumped those numbers up. Okay. I got there. I think I missed the first day or part of the first day. And so I got all of the consolation games, which that feels like cheating a little bit, but let's be honest, it was a college basketball game that we wrote about. So I don't know. I'd count it.
Yeah. So I ended up doing 39 games. My last games were the Big East tournament. And yeah, I actually had the opportunity to see a lot of really good, if you're into the NBA draft, I had an awesome schedule. I got to see Princeton and Rutgers in Newark. So obviously that's Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. I got to see Villanova and Maryland at the Prudential Center. Same thing, Derek Queen. I basically did almost every Villanova home game. Eric Dixon, I think, is a legitimate NBA prospect. The Legends Classic in Brooklyn, I saw JT Toppin, Darion Williams. Donnie Freeman's probably not a guy on Syracuse this year, but maybe next year. Trey Johnson, obviously, potential top 5 pick. So I'm actually working on an article right now, Trevor, where I'm breaking down every NBA draft prospect I saw live this year.
Perfect. So, this is literally a great segue into that. It's a really, really good time to. I'm glad we talked about that then.
But the issue is for that article, I'm clipping film of what I saw, so it's going to take me a little bit to get it out. But I'm hoping by the time I leave for the Portsmouth Invitational, that article is up on the site. That is my goal. Portsmouth 3 weeks from today.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if it's the weekend that we texted about, I will be somewhere else. So unfortunately, that is now 2 years in a row, no Portsmouth for me. But I got to get back out there. It's too local. It's too neat not to. Even if I haven't done draft stuff in a little while, it's just one of those environments. I think people don't understand. If they've never been, obviously they don't understand. But I've never been in a place where A, there's that bad a signal. B, there's NBA. And by the way, NBA people need their phone and need signal to communicate with each other about what they're seeing. So it's kind of ironic. You're in the gym in the middle of nowhere. And then just you're watching in a 75-year-old, I believe 70 or 75, getting close to 75. I know it's 70 because I was there on the 69th anniversary. So, and Brent Barry, assistant GM of the Spurs, just walks in front of you on a high school floor. It's just, it's a weird environment, and it's all like grown adult senior. Like it's all the, especially right now, like 2 years ago, I got the end of this COVID guys, 5 year, 6 year, 7 year, 8 year. I think DeAndre Williams was there. I think he's been playing college basketball since I graduated high school. Like it's a weird place, but it's honestly super cool because like everybody's there to watch really weird basketball and talk to each other for 3 days. It's kind of really authentic, I think is what I would call it.
And so. I will say I was at Summer League this year for the first time. I actually think Portsmouth might be a better like networking opportunity for people that are interested in working in basketball, more so than Summer League. Summer League, everyone is there, but that's the issue. Like it's so tough to get like one-on-one time with anybody who's anybody for an NBA team. When like Portsmouth, I went and sat next to Jameer Nelson and talked basketball with him for 10 minutes. And he's the GM of the Delaware Blue Coats. Like Portsmouth gives you those type of opportunities. So really for anybody interested, I definitely would recommend it.
All right, last thing, because it'll sort of tie into, I won't really, I guess, because there's no teams that have all been eliminated. I'm trying to find a way easily to land the plane into the Sweet 16. But I was going to cut you off at the beginning and be like, really quick, but then you got into some of the names in the article, and it actually went really well, and I'm glad we were able to get to that. I've never been to the Big East tournament. You hear John Fanta all the time talking about it. Like he talks about it just as much as he talks about the NCAA tournament, if not more, throughout the year. Just like all of this is leading to this, and like the games are great. Like I'm not discrediting it in any way. I'm really not. It's one of the most authentic, if not the most authentic conference tournament out there. But like, what's it really like?
It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's I want to say chaos, but Trevor, have you ever been to MSG or not yet?
I have. That was my first ever NBA game. It was just for context for you. I've told this story before, but March, I think it was 4th. Rockets Knicks 2020. That was when Harden was still a Rocket. To show you how long ago that really was. How many stops has he had since then? That was one of the last. He had like 38 or something crazy. Randall had a great game. I think the over hit like at the beginning of the third quarter. It was a really fun game. It was my first game ever, and then the world shut down 3 weeks later. It was like one of the last like weeks of organized basketball. So just for context, that was my first ever NBA game. Took me a little while to get out to one, but it was probably one of the coolest ones I've ever been to. So yes, I've been there for a decent environment. That Knicks team was a little weird in 2019. They were competitive that late in the year, but I haven't experienced it to any like degree of a St. John's this year by any stretch of the imagination. So
yeah, no, it was my first time being credentialed at MSG. I did have the opportunity, as I said, Legends Classic. I did Barclays Center this year, but it's an experience. Like when you're in, a press conference with Dan Hurley or with Greg McDermott or Shaka Smart, and then John Fanta walks in and Matt Norlander walks in. Like, it was cool. Definitely one of the cool experiences that I've had as a basketball journalist, if not the coolest. But like that's what was it? The Creighton DePaul game. That was I only did the first 2 days of the Big East tournament. And the second day I had to catch a 12:14 a.m. train home that got me back to the station at 2 a.m.
Nice.
So I couldn't miss the train because if not, I had to wait for the 122 one, and then I'd be home well past 3 a.m. and then have an hour ride home from the train station. So to make a long story short, because that Creighton and DePaul game went in double overtime, I had to basically leave a little after the second half started of Villanova and UConn. And I was there, credentialed and approved to cover Villanova because I did their entire season, given up from the Philadelphia area, I did all their home games. So it was awesome to witness a game like Creighton and DePaul. But, it also hampered me a little because I was there specifically to cover Villanova, and then I had to, leave.
Not be back a calendar day later. Yeah. No, I'm with you. That's the cool thing about that area, though. The access, the trains, like I think it just adds to the uniqueness of everything. And I definitely got to get back up there. Last time I was up there was, DC was the closest, I guess. I took the train up there for the CAA tournament last year. That was really neat. So, I got a few stops in the Northeast I'm going to hit. I don't know if it's going to be exactly next year, but Big East tournament's on the list. All right. I'm glad we got a chance to do that. It was a nice catch up. We've caught up on air before, off air before, but it was nice to do that on air for the listeners too. So, let's do the Sweet 16, and then just to close later, I want to talk about. I'm not necessarily going to put you on the spot and be like, "Hey, fix the transfer portal." I just want to see where your head's at with it, and obviously, I think we can both agree that it starting on Monday was lunacy.
Yeah.
We'll start like anyone else does in the South and work our way clockwise around. Auburn, Michigan. Michigan at this point is just someone somewhere in Ann Arbor is controlling them with a voodoo doll. And I'm convinced that's the only thing left. That's the only reasonable explanation left, because I love Dusty May, but like, he is not a wizard. This is not like, it's reaching a point of insane. Like it's reaching like statistical anomaly where they literally like, the numbers say eventually they will lose a game like this. Maybe it's an Auburn game, right? But like at that point, you can blame it on the fact that Auburn's the best team in the tournament. And so like, we don't really know if they get into another close game against Auburn and they win, it's just going to keep continuing that shtick. So maybe talk through Michigan, talk through this matchup a little bit. Anything, where are you leaning right now with this one, knowing that Auburn obviously is the number one overall seed?
So Auburn was actually the only 1 seed I didn't have in my Final Four.
Same here.
Honestly, it was only because I think I got too cute. I think that's really all it is. Like I said, do I really want to have 4 1 seeds in my Final Four? But if there was a year to do it, I think it would have been this year to have
Correct.
a bracket like that.
You're right.
So for that reason, Auburn was the only 1 seed. I did have Louisville as my 4th team, just to think outside of the box, and obviously they lost in the first round.
I had Texas A&M. If it makes you feel any better.
Okay.
So
for what that's worth, I mean, as you said, I mean, Michigan's won 11 games now by 4 points or less. Like as you said, like it's a statistical anomaly, I think was the perfect words to describe what's going on in Michigan. The one thing I will say is that Michigan can throw multiple guys, obviously, at Janai Broom with both Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden. So if Michigan, but at the same time, I feel like Auburn could then play a 2 big lineup like they have been a little bit with Dylan Caldwell and Janai Broom. So I really think it is going to come down to which 2 big men play better. That might sound like a cop-out answer, but I mean, if Wolf or Golden get in foul trouble early, then yeah, I don't think Michigan's going to stand much of a chance. But I'm going to take Auburn at this point just because, again, I think I got too cute before. I am going to stick with the 1 seeds, at least for now.
I said on ECB on Monday, I said, of all these games, I sat down and I was like, Auburn basically wins every single like true just matchup that you could put on the table, except maybe the bigs, like because those 2 bigs have been incredible this year for Michigan, and so that kind of was like the only spot. But I don't think it's like Michigan wins in a runaway here, right? And so that was kind of even like Auburn wins in some form or fashion in every single category except maybe coaching. I think Gussie May just has coached his tail off this year. And yet I was still so unsure about the game. Like none of it made any sense. It was one of those things I'm like, I don't want to sit here and say like it's just easy to doubt the number 1 overall seed because of their path and they might have gotten screwed. They'd have had to play they would have had to play Louisville in Rupp, and you can go through all these things. Michigan, Texas A&M, a team that already beat them, like Ole Miss at the bottom, Michigan State. Like you can go all these reasons why they can or can't have gotten there, and yet here they are playing a team that literally finished the season in the final 12 or 15 games. I can't remember the stat now, with a negative point differential. Mm-hmm. And yet here they are, Big Ten champs, and all of those things. I'm still unsure about it, even now, 24 hours out. So that was no real question, just more of a response to what you said, and just like I guess I'd ask it this way. I don't want to spend forever on each matchup necessarily, but just this one's so intriguing because of the situation of Auburn's number 1 overall nature. What do they have to do? What do they have to control so well to win this game? What does Auburn have to do to win this game by? I mean, obviously 5, 10, whatever, throw any number you want on it, but like Auburn's got to do something really well and exploit something. Because I've always said this: once you make it to the Sweet 16, you can throw X, Y, and Z out the window. It's all about exploiting something that your opponent wasn't prepared for. So what does Auburn have to do to exploit Michigan to get this done? Which feels weird asking that backwards, by the way. I'm intentionally asking it the other way around.
So what does Auburn need to do to win this?
They're going to have to do something. Like, I call it exploiting it. Like, whatever you want to call it. Auburn's going to have to do something to control this game and win the game.
So, is it a cop-out answer to say, just play? I don't want to say simple, but like, I think what makes this Auburn team so good is that they just make great decisions. They don't turn the ball over. Like, there's nothing Auburn does. Like, if you look at the KenPom page, well, yes, they're the number 3 offense and number 12 defense, but like in the individual categories, they don't stick out almost anywhere. You could say, sure, their 3-point percentage defense is 29.6, which is 7th in the nation. But like, the one thing I will say is that they are 5th in turnover percentage on offense. They do not turn it over. So if, Chad Baker-Mazara, Miles Kelly, Pettifer, like if those guys are taking care of the ball, Michigan does not force a lot of turnovers either, for what that's worth. I think if Auburn loses this game, it's because they lose it for them. I'm blanking on the expression, but they would basically shoot themselves in the foot, essentially.
They give it away. No, that's 100% right.
They would beat themselves. That's what I'm looking to say.
Yeah. I mean, and your point, like Michigan doesn't turn people over, nor are they really efficient with turnovers. At one point, they were one of the bottom 35, 40 teams in the country in turnovers. Looks like they've gotten better at that. Just kidding. They're still 324. So that disparity is quite, I think that's the most eye-opening part. But it's been the thing I point to for every Michigan game on this stretch in the last 15 games. And yet it's literally not mattered.
Yeah.
It will eventually matter. And, I don't know, against the number 1 overall seed, yeah, it's probably going to matter. Like that, they're going to have to either shoot lights out, and just for the flip side of it, they're going to have to shoot lights out, or Golden and Golden and Wolf are going to just have to just absolutely tear Broom and Cardwell apart. And I'm just not sure that's going to happen, because I think those two guys are really good together as well. So I would assume it's going to be a Trey Donaldson game, but I mean, Auburn's too deep at guard. It literally feels like there's no way Michigan can win this game. And yet KenPom only has them winning by what? Like, I just had it up. They only have them winning by 8.
Yeah.
Like, that still feels like a lot. So I'm ultimately going to go Auburn as well. I'm sticking to what I had in the original bracket. I mean, I'm just going to kind of go with what's there now. And if I didn't have it, then I'll just answer the question. But I have Auburn. It sounds like you do as well.
Yep.
Ole Miss, Michigan State. Obviously, Sparty. Sparty is what Sparty is. College basketball has adapted for the last 25 years and changed. And yet, just for whatever reason, longevity, stubbornness, I don't care, whatever it is, Tom Izzo has just stuck the course. And now in 2025, he's benefiting from that. On the other side, Ole Miss, a lot of people, were you one of the folks like everyone else that had North Carolina beating Ole Miss in the first round?
I want to say yes, but like that was a toss-up to me, that one.
Yeah, it was.
Either way, yeah.
It felt like Ole Miss was getting like railroaded of like people just picking against them. And I quite frankly did not think they were going to beat Iowa State, if I'm being honest. But just kidding. I had Ole Miss over Lipscomb. I thought Lipscomb was going to get it done against Iowa State because of the health. But so I guess I had Ole Miss, Michigan State. I had that right. But what it came down to for me was Ole Miss's schedule. Like, it ultimately had to matter. Playing that many hard games and losing a couple of them close throughout the middle of the conference schedule, like, I feel like that really matters. It's the same thing I say, like, there's the most prepared teams in conference play are the teams that played hard conference schedules. It's always the same thing. And yet, here we are. Ole Miss isn't big. They're playing a team that is. They're playing a team with way more coaching experience, and yet it feels like the SEC just always seems to prevail. And they're playing Michigan State. It was probably worst case scenario draw for them. Where are you with this game? Any thoughts on this one?
So this is a tough one, and I think it's because coming into this year, I was not high on Michigan State at all. Like, I didn't know where they'd get the points from, because obviously no one projected Jace Richardson to be this good, and outside of him, no one really has been. I know Jaden Akins is their leading scorer, but clearly that seems like at this point, if Michigan State will go as far as Jace Richardson will take them. What concerns me about Michigan State is the same thing that concerned me about St. John's when they lost to Arkansas. It's the three-point shooting. They shoot 31%, which is 323rd in the nation, but they're the best three-point defense in the nation. So I think really that is what it comes down to. It's not like Ole Miss shoots the lights out from they're an average three-point shooting team, but if Michigan State isn't able to hit anything from deep, if they're shooting, what I said, 31% from three, they're going to struggle. As you said, you looked at KenPom spread for the last game. This one, KenPom has as a 3-point spread in favor of Michigan State. That line scares me initially if I'm Michigan State. Just thinking, okay, it's a 2 versus 6. It's only a 3-point spread. Michigan State, I will say, obviously has the athleticism factor, and that matters. But look at St. John's. I want to say St. John's had the athleticism factor on Arkansas, but Arkansas, I don't know. That one's still pretty even, but St. John's just couldn't hit the threes, and look what happened to them.
Yeah, I love St. John's. I had them going, I believe, to the Elite Eight, like a lot of people did. I had them going to the. Looks like I had them. Yeah, I had Florida over St. John's, like a lot of people did. It was eventually going to bite them in the tail, and for some reason, in Michigan State, it hasn't against a team like New Mexico and Bryant. Bryant wasn't going to shoot the three on them. They were actually going to try to make that physical and play with Michigan State, and I think it actually worked out in their favor for a little bit there. New Mexico, et cetera. To your point about Michigan State's threes, it's very simple. Every game they've lost this year, that was their downfall, except for one. I'm going back through them really quick. Way back at the beginning of the year in the Champions Classic, they shot 3 of 24, 12.5% from three. They lost to Kansas by 77-69. Like that may be more. That may tell us more about Kansas now than it does about Michigan State. Kind of funny to think about. Memphis, they lost. I want to say, yeah, that had to have been in Maui, Colorado, November, Memphis, North Carolina. Yeah, that was in Maui, and they shot 7 of 20 from three, 35%. That feels good in the context of Memphis. That game was actually a lot lower scoring. They got him. I can't believe they kind of lost that one based on just that number alone. Against USC, they lost at home against Galen Center, I guess that would be. They shot 33.3%, 5 of 13. Bad. Indiana was the only exception, or at UCLA, they shot like ridiculously bad as well. 5 of 22. The point being is there's a clear recipe to beating this team. The problem is ever since, if you don't count the loss to Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament, ever since the Indiana game, they basically have, and that was on February 11th, they've basically went, we're not going to take a ridiculous amount of them. You're going to have to play to our style, and you're going to have to figure it out. The problem is I think Ole Miss can do that.
Chris Beard, if there's a guy that could game plan and kind of force Michigan State to shoot more threes than they're comfortable with, Chris Beard is one of the top coaches in the nation that I feel comfortable with game planning against that.
Because they can make the threes too. That's the old advantage for Ole Miss is they're going to be confident saying, well, if we make 12 of them and you make 6 of them, we're automatically going to feel pretty good about our chances. The problem is they just don't have anybody in the front court. Like I like Malik Dia. Don't get me wrong, I believe is his name. But they just don't have any size.
Yeah,
he's it. Like Mikael Browns-Jones, a guy I watched it at UNCG. I like him. I think he's a pretty big body, but at just 6'8", you're not gonna have anybody defending the rim. And Izzo, is gonna want to play those guys in the paint attack. Even with Carr, I know he's small, but like he's gonna have a double probably. Like he's probably gonna feast, and they're gonna have to figure out a way to figure that out. I definitely think this game is gonna be close. Like that line, like you said, is kind of fishy almost, and I think it's probably right. The issue for me in the historical context of picking champions and picking Final Four teams, et cetera, is Michigan State's 25th in offense. And, every single champion, I don't have it in front of me, 19 of the last 22 champions, I believe, top 20 KenPom offense, top 40 KenPom defense.
Yeah.
And Michigan State's 25. So I'm eventually going to pick against them. I'm not sure it's now. And again, my original prediction was them going to the Elite Eight. So I'll stick to that. But sounds like I'm still unsure, but probably lean Sparty. That's my guess.
I'll go Ole Miss here.
It's fair. What'd you have in the bracket? I'm just curious. What'd you have in your original bracket if you have one?
Yeah, let me see.
You don't have to pull it up. It's fine.
I'm just looking at
people's context versus now versus then. I think it's
cool. I think I had Iowa State, and that was one I did not feel comfortable with, as you said, due to the injuries. But just the South region is very weak. Oh no, you know who I had? I had Marquette. Because I told you I had Louisville in the Final Four. I had Louisville beating Marquette in the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four. That's what it was. Both of them lost in round one.
It happens. It's the beauty of March.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick to Sparty. I think it'll be Sparty, and I think it'll be Auburn, and I think that'll be the game we all want, and I think that'll be the game we get. Let's go to the South. Duke team I'm very familiar with, of course, being around these parts, and then Arizona. It's cinema that we get Caleb Love again.
Yeah.
Like it's just awesome, and like he very well could shoot three of I don't know 19 from three or 3 of 19 from the field or whatever, and this completely changes everything I'm talking about. But the weird thing about that Arizona Duke matchup that I think people are going to look back on, a lot of folks that maybe don't follow it as closely, or because ultimately, like I've made this point all year, the people that watch this and listen to this now are the people that turn this on in March. Like it's the people like that's where you generally see an audience spike. That's where you see this. That's where you see that with numbers. There, a lot of folks don't know these two played back in November.
Mm-hmm.
And so the point I like to make about this game that I think is really interesting is, and I'm curious your thoughts on it, is that was when Arizona was still trying to figure out an identity. Arizona didn't have an identity back then, and it was still a really close game because it was at McHale. And so Arizona knows well, like as you saw Anthony Del Orso down the stretch, my guy, had those free throws. Like he was lethargic on offense for most of November, December. He was still getting his feet wet. He was still understanding playing at the next level, trying to figure out how to be a defender, and then goes out and plays a role perfectly, comes in and makes all those free throws down the stretch to get him to the Sweet 16. And so that to me, now granted, Duke's had the same opportunities all year to do the same thing. Arizona just played a harder schedule. And so that I feel like that kind of balances out. And so I guess my point with Arizona would be they've kind of figured out who they are. They didn't know that now in the previous matchup. And I think that really makes this game interesting.
Yeah. I mean, again, look at Kent's prompt spread. It's an 8-point projected Duke win. That one scares me. The line itself doesn't scare me because I would have guessed probably about 7 or 8. But I think, Trevor, everything you just reiterated, that like Arizona knows who they are now. They're starting to figure each other out. Carter Bryant is now playing up substantial. He was not playing in the beginning of the year. He's a projected NBA first-round pick. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this team is gelling better with like this. They had what's his name, Krivas, earlier in the year. I think he's a hell of a player, but clearly, like, it was not working. That's why they started 4-5 or whatever they started. Now, they're playing less Trey Towson. They're playing more Henry Visa. And I think just Tommy Lloyd is figuring out his rotations. Trey Towson's my guy. Anthony Orso's my guy. I had the opportunity to interview both of them. But I think Tommy Lloyd is starting to figure out, or has already figured out, what rotations are going to work for this iteration of this Arizona team.
Yeah, it will be really interesting down the stretch. And I know that Shire today rumored or said something or whatever, alluded to Malik Brown potentially coming back again. That shoulder, man, he takes one hit, he's out again. And so I wonder if they take the side of caution because they probably won't need him in this game. I think needs a strong word. Because he's like, folks, like I think Fanta said it, like, they're going to need him to win the national championship. And I'm like, I'm not sure about that. But he's really, really important to, especially stylistically, again, trying to defend Arizona. They've gotten to this point without him recently. So I think that they can manage. Now, are you going to need him, hypothetically, if they play BYU or Alabama? Yeah, you're definitely going to need him against one of those two teams, more than likely Alabama. I don't know, man. I hate to sit here and question Duke because they have the best player in the country. They have one of the best rosters in the country, top to bottom, depth-wise, positional size, too. Like, it's just been really, really, really good for them this year. I'm going to feel really bad picking Duke, knowing that Arizona, I think, has a really strong chance to get it done. I'll take Duke. I'm just curious. Where do you land?
I'm going to take Duke because, honestly, Cooper Flagg missing that time in the ACC championship, I think, is the best thing that could happen to Con Canupa. I think, he gives them that number 2 reliable guy that Duke needs. So I'm going to go Duke. Do you think Michigan has a better chance of beating Auburn or Arizona has a better chance of beating Duke?
Arizona, only because the first game was closer without an identity, like I made a point earlier. That's
okay.
I just think now. Granted, if Michigan, my answer changes if Michigan's down 6 or less at the Final Four timeout. Mm-hmm. Obviously, at that point, all bets are off with this voodoo team. But that's again, I think that's just the point we've reached with it. BYU, Alabama. If you like points, you're getting points.
Yeah, this is one in my bracket. I actually had BYU versus Alabama, and I had BYU winning.
Okay. So let's just jump into that then. Like, what's the case for? You said you have BYU out over Alabama already.
I had BYU in my bracket over Alabama.
All right, give me the case. Because that's awesome that you picked that because I did not. I had Wisconsin there.
I think the case is just in a game that's that high-powered offensively. Like, as you said, all bets are off. And I just think at the time when I picked it, Grant Nelson, we didn't know about his status. Now, I think I'll go Alabama in the matchup. But, I mean, BYU, their offense is just so fun to watch. Kevin Young is such a good coach. They shoot so many threes, so many of the shots are assisted. And I think that does matter. And Alabama, I think the advantage they have is their tempo. They're the number one tempo in the country, and teams just cannot run with them. And while BYU does not play at a fast tempo or fast pace like that, I think just the way they play offense, they're one team that could match Alabama if Alabama's going to play their style. Now, again, now that I know Grant Nelson's playing, I think I would reverse it. And if I had to repick my bracket now, I'll take Alabama. But it would not shock me in the slightest if BYU won this game. It's a 5-point spread in favor of Alabama and KenPom. But this is one I think I'm going to switch. I'll go Alabama reluctantly. But as you said, if you like points, like I think this is going to be the most fun game to watch in this round of the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I sent some folks earlier, like the other day. I was like, "Hey, go find me the highest over/under of any tournament game in recent memory," and hoping to have an answer soon. But this game has to rival that.
What's the over/under? Do we know?
Look it up really quick, but it's probably ridiculously high.
KenPom has it 89-84, so that's what 173.
That seems really low. I think Vegas is going to have it even higher than that. So, because Vegas is going to want people, the dumb money is going to be on the over, of course.
175.5 according to ESPN.
It's interesting. I'm not sure I buy the fact that man, I'm not shocked. I'm shocked it's that low, actually. I just because I think that's just how Vegas works. Does the I don't want to call it lack of inexperience, but I hate to sit here and call tournament experience into question. Kevin Young, BYU, a couple of freshmen. Does it feel like Alabama? Like, does that feel like such a big advantage that people have to be thinking about? That they've been here already, they've made this run, that this and it's a decent core of guys that played last year.
No, I think that definitely factors in. And like Grant Nelson, especially, that guy, every time there's a big game and they need a big play,
he's there.
It's unbelievable.
Every time.
I don't know if there's a guy in college basketball that if I need a bucket from with the game on the line, there's not many guys I'm picking over Grant Nelson. Like he just, every time they need him, he's there. And he gets it done every single time. So yeah, I wouldn't undermine that at all. I think that is a big factor into why Alabama would likely win this game. And the last thing I'll note, Trevor, is Alabama has 5 guys averaging double digits, which I think that does matter in terms of like BYU, if they want to win, they need Richie Saunders to like score 20 plus points, if not more. Like Alabama, Mark Seals or Grant Nelson, if either of them go cold, they still have Aiden Holloway, LeBaron Philon, Chris Youngblood, Youngblood's out, I think, right? Yeah. But like they have other guys, Darion Reed, I know he doesn't score a lot, but he could get hot. Clifford Omoyori, like Alabama just has so much firepower that I don't think BYU will able to match up with, like in a given night, unless Saunders is going to have one of those nights where he just is unconscious when he's shooting.
which the way he's played lately, yeah, that's not within the realm of possibility. People have pointed to BYU's defense and some of the, like, I know it's not about numbers, but they're the worst defense left in the entire tournament. It's just easy pick for me. I fade teams once we get this late. I fade the worst defensive teams. You can point to Miami recently as like the Final Four team. I would push back and say it's the exception. But yeah, I'd like to fade teams this late that are bad defensively. Alabama's actually been a lot better this year. So at least in recent memory. So I'm going to go with. Did you ultimately flip to Alabama?
Yeah, flip to Alabama.
All right, I'm writing your picks down so we can. So when we get to the final, we'll hit the Final Four when we're done as well. So, all right, we'll go down to Houston, Purdue. Congratulations, Houston! You beat a 16 seed. You beat Gonzaga, which is probably one of the most unfavorable 1-8 draws anybody's ever had ever. And then your reward is to play Purdue in Indianapolis. Sick. Congrats to Houston for being a 1 seed and getting royally screwed along the way. So I say that because I like Houston. I like Kelvin Sampson. I root for him. But man, that's a tough draw. Like getting Purdue and Indy, like that's just poor planning. It just is. I don't think Houston cares. The Cougars is one of the best Cougars teams of Kelvin Sampson's tenure. One of their worst offenses, which is crazy. Or best. I'd have to look at it again. I've made the point 1,000 times at this point. But the point being is no Jamal Shed, and they feel like they've gotten better. It's just a wild thing to say about a Kelvin Sampson team that plays exactly to a T the way they do, but then their offense is also really good as well. So, any Cougars thoughts as well?
No, I agree that obviously it is a tough draw having to play Purdue and Indy. But this is another game where I just think it's going to come down to 3-point shooting. Both teams play at a very slow pace. So that means there's going to be less possessions in the game. So when there's less possessions in the game, the shots that count for 3 points instead of 2 points start to matter a lot more. So with that said, Houston, they're number one in the nation, shooting 39.8% from three. But they're 296 in 3-point attempts for every field goal attempt. So, like, they don't shoot a lot of them. Purdue gives up a crap ton of threes. 43% of their opponent's field goal attempts are threes. So, I do think Houston is going to get their shots off more frequently than they typically do in such a slow-paced game. And I think that is going to be the difference. I actually had Purdue losing a high point. I just thought, okay, they can't defend. And High Point is a very good mid-major. But Purdue, like Brandon Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, they are probably the two best guys in this game as well, potentially. No shade at LJ Cryer. But, like, that does matter as well. Having home field advantage matters. So, like, it wouldn't shock me. Like, I know that's kind of my half-hearted way of hedging my bets and not being wrong either way. I'm still going to go Houston because I did have them in the national championship when I picked my bracket. But yeah, I'm not going to keep sleeping on this. For what it's worth, I have every single Big Ten team losing, I think, Trevor. I have Michigan, Michigan State, and whoever we're talking about right now, Purdue losing, for what that's worth. But I faded the Big Ten coming into the bracket, and I might have been wrong for that. So,
yeah, I think the matchups are going to fall and against them and against their favor there. So, yeah, the Houston Purdue thing. I had someone argue the other day that Painter needs to throw a zone at Houston and make them shoot threes. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I feel like that Houston would exploit it. Maybe Houston falls into a trap and then they don't shoot it. But like they're forced to shoot more of them. And that's kind of the argument is they don't shoot a lot of them. But are we really going to take a chance on the number one statistical shooting team in the country? Like that seems far-fetched. I think their defense is suffocating. I think that they will be able to neutralize Smith, Lawyer, really anybody, JKR. They're better defensively matched against any of those offensive players. I think, honestly, Purdue struggles to score in this game pretty consistently. So I wouldn't be surprised if Houston won by 10, 15, like just because of how suffocated Purdue is going to feel. But I think Painter's really excellent. I think, especially with the press conferences recently, just him showing that side of him. We know he's going to be game planning this. We know the schematics to it are going to be really good. Guys got to go out and execute. I like Braden Smith, but I don't know. I said the other day, Houston has arguably a top 5 defender at their position in LJ Cryer for his size. And then I think they arguably have, statistically, they have the second or third best defender according to Evan Mia and Francis. So I don't know. That's two really big advantages to throw at TKR and throw at Braden Smith and then let the rest of the guys beat you. Purdue really has no chance if that executes perfectly. So, I'm going to go with Houston. I've also been a Cougar fan for the better part of 5 years, and so I'm not backing down against them now. I think this is finally the chance. I also have them in the national championship game as well. So, and we'll get to that later. Kentucky, Tennessee, round 3. Tennessee is 0-2 in this game, and as you've heard a million times in your life, I'm sure, just like I have, it's really hard to beat a team 3 times. Does that stand? Does Kentucky win 3 times?
I don't think they do, but I wouldn't say they're going to lose just because they already beat them twice. Like, I don't think because it's a trilogy matchup, I don't think that's why Kentucky loses this time around.
Yeah.
I will say I do think Tennessee's a better team, and it is tough to beat a team that's better than you 3 times. Obviously, that's a fact, but it's a fact that it's tough to beat the team that's better than you 3 times. But I think the fact that Jackson Robinson's out, I think the fact that who's the other guy at Kentucky out? I know someone else is.
Robinson's the only one I know for a fact. Butler, I know is
Kirk Kriisa. Kirk Kriisa.
Oh yeah, Kerr's been out all year. Yeah.
So with those 2 guys out, I think they both did play in the first 2 Tennessee games. I don't know about Kriisa, but I know Robinson did. I think that's going to matter. This is the best Tennessee offense we've seen from Rick Bones in a little bit. Like last year, Tennessee went to the Elite Eight, and I think this team might be, even though they don't have Dalton Knecht or a player of his caliber, I think they might be a little bit better than they were last year. And I was really Tennessee was my national title pick, if you remember, going into last year. And then obviously they went to the Elite Eight, and I think this team might be a little bit better. It's a shame they have to play Houston in the Elite Eight because I don't like that matchup for them. But I do think just Tennessee's the better team on the neutral court. They already got to game plan twice against Kentucky. So that part I do think matters, the fact that they've seen them twice and, like, know how they got and beat. I'm sure they watched the film a million times, like, obviously. But Mark Pope has the same advantage, you know? Like, he's going to watch the times they did beat Tennessee a million times. But with that said, I think the better team will prevail. And I think this Tennessee defense is great, obviously, and it's the best offense we've seen from them.
All the signs point to them being the better team, but Kentucky yet again 2-0. Obviously, both on different floors. I lean Tennessee only because Lanier, if he's on, is the best player on the floor. That may seem really disrespectful to Lamont Butler, but a lot of that Kentucky, what makes them so special is it's a really good team. It's a really good unit. I think there's some exploitable things there. I think you can attack the rim a little bit on them. I think if you can get them off their spot, I think you have an advantage. The problem is I don't think Tennessee does either of those things decently well. So kind of negates everything I just said. I reluctantly, this is the pick I had the least confidence in out of all of them. I reluctantly went Tennessee over Kentucky in my original bracket and as well as now. I have Houston playing Tennessee like most of America does. Let's hit the last region and we'll do some transportable stuff on the way out. Florida, Maryland. Maryland finally had a buzzer beater go their way, and that's why they're here. Albeit travel, not travel, don't care. Awesome moment. We honestly kind of needed it, if I'm being honest. Florida, been a very trendy upset pick, or national championship pick, excuse me. I don't want to know yours just yet. I do want to know eventually where you landed on them, because a lot of people have them. I believe they're 25% of brackets picked for national champion right now. What does Maryland need to do? Because Florida's deep. Florida's got probably the best guard trio out of this game. I ask it similar to how the Auburn-Michigan thing is out. I think they feel very similar. I think those games do, Florida and Maryland, and then Auburn-Michigan. Not that it's a Big Ten team playing an SEC team where they're the least favorable of the matchup. That's not the point. But just stylistically, I think this is very similar. So what does Maryland have to do to win this game? Because obviously they have a really good 5, but there's going to be something. Like I'm just not sure there's one thing they're going to be able to exploit.
The best answer I could probably give is problem. Maryland's defense is like borderline elite. I wouldn't say elite because I think very few defenses in the nation are elite. But like in Kent Palm, for example, the 6th in adjusted defensive efficiency, like that matters. Florida, outside of Alabama, has the best offense in the country. Like they just have so much offensive firepower with Walter Clayton and Will Richard and Elijah Martin, that trio you just alluded to. But I think, as you said, it's going to come down to how Maryland is going to defend that trio and how they're going to probably defend the paint. Like if Florida's guards are getting downhill, getting to the mid-range, Florida's going to score easily at will. If Maryland is able to have Juju Reese or Derek Queen defend the paint, make it difficult for those guys to get their shots, they might have a chance. I mean, we just saw how difficult it was. I know Nick Clifford, like he's incredible, but we just saw what Maryland did to game plan against him, and it relatively worked, I would say, because it's a lot easier to game plan against one specific guy or two specific guys if you count Nick Clifford and Lake than it is to, potentially game plan against the best trio in the nation. So I know I've been saying for a lot of these games it's going to come down to 3-point shooting. For Maryland, I think it's going to come down to how they just defend and make life difficult on those 3 Florida guards.
I think you're right. The hesitation I have, though, is UConn did that perfectly and Florida escaped.
But they escaped. They almost didn't escape.
Do we really think Maryland's going to execute a game plan like that better than Dan Hurley is?
No. But I think the best chance they have, though.
No, it is. I would maybe look at, I know Derek Queen, you're relying on a freshman who just had a big moment. But if you could really point to one thing with Florida, it's their front court defensively.
Yeah.
So maybe Derek Queen maybe it's a legacy game. I mean, maybe it's solidifies himself as the 3rd overall pick type of game. Like maybe it's that kind of thing, but that's asking a lot. I mean, Rice is a good guy to look at here as well, that if he gets going from 3, that really changes the pace of this game. But Clayton's just been too good. Martin's been in this spot before and been further too. They just feel so deep. I don't know, man. Florida they feel inevitable. They feel like inevitable that they're going to get there and they're going to win.
They feel like UConn last year, except they have more competition to do it, if that makes sense. Like last year's UConn team, sure. No one doubt. Like they were the heavy favorites because no one really like they had such an easy path because there was no clear cut. Purdue might have been the number 2 team, and that's what they ended up playing in the national championship.
Yep.
I like Tennessee, like I said, they made it to the Elite 8, but there wasn't any clear cut like how those Duke, Houston, Auburn, and Florida this year. Like those are by far the 4 best teams, and they're all going to get into each other's way at some point. It seems like.
The matchup we all had predicted. Ultimately, I'm going Florida. To be clear, it sounds like you're going the same. Yep. Okay. The matchup we all predicted: Texas Tech, Arkansas, because logic. Calipari obviously has had an incredible run. Texas Tech is getting healthy, it seems, sort of, but they've also won without those guys. Tech is a very trendy pick pre this game, and also just up until this point in general in this game. I don't want to be dismissive of Arkansas. I really don't, because they basically from that Kentucky upset at Rupp, that they've been a completely different team from that point on. That changed their whole season. So anything's possible with them in Cal in a big moment. Like, call him what you want, but the guy can coach in a big moment. It just is what it is. That being said, I think Tech severely outmatches them in a lot of areas. Where do you lean on this one right now?
I'm going to go Tech. I had Tech over St. John's in my bracket for what it's worth. So
I had Tech. I had Missouri. I had Missouri over Tech. I had St. John's over Missouri. So
I actually said going into March Madness, if there was a team that isn't a 1, because I said the 4 1 seeds most likely will be the 4 teams in the Final Four. I think the 5th best team in the country right now is Texas Tech, outside of those 4. In terms of like the ability to get to a national championship, Tech defends, they rebound, They're very smart in how they play. They don't turn it over. They shoot well. They pass well. They just don't have any weaknesses. Like, this Tech team is built like a team that can win the national championship. Arkansas just have the size advantage. Obviously, they have Jonas Adu. They had Big Z. But, like, I think Tech's depth small ball lineup with JT Toppin at the 5, Darian Williams at the 4. Obviously, hopefully, Chance McMillan plays. Christian Anderson's been awesome. Elijah Hawkins, obviously. I don't think it matters. I just think Tech is overwhelmingly so much better at every. And, like, I agree with you, Trevor. Arkansas is a completely different team since they wanted Rob. But I really think this Texas Tech team has the components of a national championship team. And it's a damn shame that if they win this, they'll have to go against Florida most likely. Because as we said, Florida might be the team of destiny this year. But I think if Tech was in any other region that wasn't against Florida, I'd be taking Tech over Auburn right now in an Elite Eight matchup.
I think they actually would favor better in that one than against Florida. I do. Without going deep into a hypothetical, that's not going to happen. I'm not a bracketologist, but losing to St. Joe's on a neutral floor, losing to UCF at home, that's going to hurt your resume. That's for sure. Losing to TCU, this team is not a 3 seed. They're just not. They're better than that. And so I don't want to be dismissive of Arkansas. They'll be the more athletic team. I think that'll actually really be an important advantage for them late in the game. Problem is, I don't think late in the game is going to matter. Texas Tech has been really impressive. All year, they were kind of my team I'm probably going to be wrong about, just from a day-to-day, week-to-week team that I probably undervalued most of the year. Mississippi State was my team I could not predict correctly every week. Just week to week, every game we had on ECB or any kind of show I've ever done, they were the team I couldn't get right on a pick. I also didn't pick them against. I also didn't get the pick right against Baylor, so the trend continues. Tech was the team every time I'd look at KenPom, they're still in that top 10. They're still in the top 10. They're still in the top, and I was just maybe too late to them. I don't know, but I think that they beat Arkansas. I think they beat them handedly. So, all right, to recap. You have, and I'm doing this off of memory, so correct me if I'm wrong. You have Auburn, Ole Miss, Duke, Alabama. You have Houston, Tennessee, Tech, and Florida.
Yep.
Who makes the Final Four and who wins the national championship? You can change it. You can do what you had originally. Just whatever you feel right now, whatever you feel like going with.
So I will go Auburn. I'm going to go with the 1 seeds. Again, I think the only team that has a legitimate shot at knocking off one of the 1 seeds is Texas Tech, as I maintained. Maybe Tennessee matches up fairly well with Houston if they even get to that point. But at this point, I think I'm just going to go with the 4 1 seeds.
Okay. Coming into the bracket, I had Texas, or kind of coming out of Thursday there, I had Texas A&M, Florida, Houston, and Duke. So I had 3 of the 4. I'm not changing that now. Obviously, I have to pick a different one in A&M's region, and I will go Auburn this time. So I probably should have had all 4 ones. Shocker. The one I'm going to be sneakily keeping an eye on is going to be Tennessee. But again, 2 seed. No one's really shocked by that. All right, really quick. I know in the second time here, the Sweet 16 was obviously most important. But do you have – I don't really want to put you on the spot, but do you have a fix for the transfer portal? Or is it as simple as, for those who don't know, it started on Monday, the day after the Sweet 16 was enshrined. Last year it was after, I believe, Selection Sunday, and they pushed it back a week. Great, cool, love it. Doesn't fix the problem. So is it as simple for you as it just needs to be the day after the national championship game?
In terms of when the portal starts?
Yeah, and just I assume I'm making a big assumption here, but I assume that you think it's ludicrous that it's right now as well.
Yeah, that was the thing when you told me we're going to be talking about what can be fixed with the transfer portal. I don't have an issue with how the portal is, but I do have an issue with when it is. So I'm glad this is...
Yeah, that's the main problem I have with it.
Because what's going to start happening is teams that are in the Sweet 16 are either going to have players hold out because they know they're going to transfer, and it's going to mess with the Sweet 16 run, or you're going to have a bunch of tampering, guys behind closed doors, agents saying, oh, yeah, well, this guy's playing in the Final Four right now, but, he thinks he could help you guys get to the Final Four next year if you pay him more. And then, that's when it gets sticky, when there's all that backdoor dealing and everything else, because guys don't want to fall behind the 8 ball. They see, today, Owen Freeman commit to Creighton. What if there's a big man out there right now that says, oh, I wish I was able to play at Creighton, but I can't even declare for the portal yet because X, Y, and Z, because I'm still playing in the Sweet 16. I think that's the biggest issue with it, that all of a sudden we're going to start seeing, for lack of a better term, tampering in the portal primarily early, I suppose, in the Sweet 16 realm.
Yeah, someone said it to me the other day, and they said it best. You're not gonna stop tampering. You're only just moving when it's exemplified. Which, sure. The argument I made, folks are, there's not many people that think it should be that it should. Yeah, somebody brought up, okay, just during the Final Four. I've been to the Final Four. It's a nightmare to plan and do things. Imagine coaches there for all those responsibilities, because a lot of people don't know. Most Division I head coaches, so 364 of them, are in wherever it is, Houston, San Antonio this year. And they're doing a lot. Their press conferences, media, talking. It's assistant feeding at that time too. That's where kind of you're trying to get your assistants or whatever. And so if the portal's later, it gives you time to build the rest of your staff out or whatever. People thinking that it should be during the Final Four, they're already doing all that while they're there. So I don't have a fix for it. I just was curious if you had the same idea of just of what it is. And I'm with you. I have no problem with it. I think the idea of what guys can and can't be paid, the contract thing that people are arguing and bringing up, I have no issue with any of that. I would love to see, I would love to see a world where you don't have a guy transfer more than 3 times. 3 seems like a lot. I love the idea people bring up all the time of oh, let's just go back to the old way. I'm like, cool, great fix. Let's go back to the thing that we changed ultimately to fix, right? That's not a great strategy. But if it's a, hey, one-time free transfer, but also you still get exceptions like grad, which would ultimately open up the door for a third, which is why I brought it up, or coaching change, hardship, medical, you can still give all the same exceptions. It's just, if it's strictly just because, okay, I'm okay with the free market because ultimately that's kind of what it is. And we don't restrict NBA free agency other than the length of the contract and how much money teams can spend. I know that's something you're really big on is all the free agency stuff and all the NBA business stuff. But I don't want to ever feel like I'm not pro player in these arguments. I want to make people abundantly know that you're not going to stop tampering. You just need to make it more efficient. And somebody was like, I had a conversation the other day, oh, it's an optics thing. Yeah, I care about the optics of college basketball. I care about how college basketball is viewed. I care about how the sport operates, and ultimately having the transfer portal after the Sweet 16. You mentioned guys might be sitting out, whatever. I'm trying to find it. I can't find the guy's name now. I'm just searching through Twitter. I remember it happened. Michigan has a guy right now that's already redshirted. That's already said he's not. Justin Pippen.
Yep.
Transferring while your team is in the Sweet 16 is lunacy to me. But like you said, Justin Pippen's probably going to get opportunity. He's represented by Clutch, Scottie Pippen's son, former 4-star. Somebody's going to pay him a lot of money. He averaged 2.5 points a game this year. If I had to pull it up quick enough, I could probably do that. He averaged less than 3 points a game this year. It's lunacy to think that kind of guy is demanding an open market plea right now.
And I think some of the issues, obviously I covered Villanova all year, but look at them. They're holding out for their guy. They allegedly want Kevin Willard as their head coach. So while they're waiting for him to play in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 or the Final Four, their entire starting 5 graduated, and they can't participate in the portal really because they don't know who the hell their head coach is.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. It's part of the reason I brought up the Final Four and the assistants thing. I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot about the coaching part of it, but there shouldn't be any restrictions on coaches because there's a buyout and the school gets all the money out of it anyway. It ultimately is good for the economy of college basketball with coaches moving. However, was this the most we've ever had 1 year head coaches move in the same offseason? Like it's
last year was, I think the most was like 67. I think we have 42 coaching changes already this year.
Oh, I mean like guys on 1 year, like 1 year at the previous school.
Yeah.
This has to be a record high. Like Ross Hodge is there 2 years. Okay, that doesn't count him. But even just with DeVries McCollum, like it feels like a lot. Like, I don't know. Any thoughts on any of the coaching stuff before we get out of here? I mean, any ones you were surprised by, you liked, guys you covered, guys you're friends with? I mean, you've interviewed a lot of coaches. So.
Yeah, I honestly really like almost every hire this cycle. Like, that sounds like lunacy to say. I love Ben McCollum. Yeah, I love Ben McCollum to Iowa. I love DeVries to Indiana. I love Sean Miller to Texas. Pitino was a guy that I was hoping Villanova would get.
I was wondering where you're going with that.
If obviously they strike out on Willard. At this point, if Villanova doesn't get Willard, I don't know what they do. Because Chris Collins, I know, signed whatever extension to stay at Northwestern. So, like, it'll be very interesting to see where they go. Penn, obviously, got an alumni and a good coach in Fran McCaffrey, and that's another team I cover closely. So, I don't know. I'm really Phil Martelli Jr. to VCU. Even, like, Brian Hodgson to USF. Like, this has been a very fun coaching carousel. Odom to Virginia, obviously. But
it's all guys that I like at their previous spots, and until we see what happens, you can't immediately hate them at their new spot if they haven't done anything yet. No. It's kind of a simple formula, right? Yeah, I was wondering how detailed you were going to go with the Pitino thing, because Pitino to Xavier, people were calling it kind of a cop out after Mac and all that stuff, and I don't know. I think that's who they wanted all along. I think Pitino they had to eventually get to a point where he wanted it. And I think that happened. And I think the money spoke for itself.
And I think he used VCU kind of as like a leveraging bargaining chip a little bit. Because, like, is VCU really that much better of a job than New Mexico? Maybe it is, with those amount of West schools leaving for the Pac-12 next year.
Yeah.
But I don't know the school's NIL situations. But, like, it was never going to be VCU for Pitino. He kind of used that, in my opinion, as leverage.
It's a good point. Yeah, I saw a tweet. At this point, we're just talking about Twitter, but I saw a tweet that was really funny. I wish I could give the original poster credit. I apologize. They were like, at this point, if they strike out on Willard because he makes the Final Four or whatever, Maryland extends him for 5 years. They're gonna have to hire Fran Duffy again just to complete the love five, the love triangle, love whatever the 5-sided thing is, but. It's an exciting thing because he's been around the panel so much, but he's a legend, man. It'd be really, really funny if he coached Villanova for like a gap year to get him for the next cycle. It's kind of funny.
And like now, George Mason just signed Tony Skinn to an extension that'll keep him there.
That's a guy I like a lot as well.
Where does Maryland now go if Willard does leave? Like, there's no obvious candidate now that fills both Villanova and Maryland. So, like, does Villanova pivot to McCronin or Porter Moser? Those are names that were out there. I'm very fascinated to see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm excited. My neck of woods, we got a couple of coaching changes as well. Will Wade, John. I'm going to say John A for now until I get to meet the guy and get his last name right here at Campbell. Excited to see what he's going to build here. But yeah, a lot of fun in both of our areas with some coaching carousel stuff. So as people say, it's going to keep on spinning. It's been really fun. I didn't really know what to expect with Sweet 16 coaching stuff. We had some technical difficulties. People will be able to tell halfway through when stuff kind of flips around and we get things figured out. But first of all, appreciate your time today. Before we get out of here, plug anything. You talked about some articles at the top. Talk about anything you got working on. College basketball is about to wind down. I know you do NBA stuff as well. So just on the way out, talk about stuff you're going to be doing in the next couple of months.
Yeah, as I said, you guys can follow me on Twitter at _NBAGel. That's NBAGELL. Go follow my work at The Center Hub, the-center-hub.com, where, as I said, I'm working on 2 pieces right now. The first one is, as I said, these are the NBA draft prospects I saw during my time as credentialed media, 39 different games. So that kind of intertwines my NBA draft stuff with my college basketball stuff. And then I'm going to be writing an article as NBA free agency gets closer about the 10 most intriguing contracts you should expect to see this free agency. That should be a super fun one. Go listen to the One and Done podcast if you like college basketball. Go listen to the Bird Rights podcast if you like the NBA. And I want to do something Portsmouth related before I go out there. That's TBD. But be on the lookout for that. Again, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see all that coverage that I'm doing. And Trevor, again, I appreciate you taking the time for having me on.
Thanks for dealing with the extra time it took and the technical difficulties. Everything for Stephen will be linked in the description below. The Center Hub, all the podcasts, all the articles, anything we can get for him, it'll be there as well. Don't forget, if you're going to be going to any of these Sweet 16 games, or you're going to be going to NBA games, sporting events, concerts throughout the summer, don't forget you can use code 2pointers, SeatGeek, link in the top of the description, SeatGeek.com. 2pointers, we greatly appreciate their support on this show, and obviously using that code will help support me as well. So on the way out there, on behalf of Steven, Center Hub, all those guys, this has been the 2Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and enjoy the rest of the tournament.